Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's NAC at Home program. My name is Nadine Heidinger, and I'm the Director of Communications at the National Arts Club. For those of you who are not familiar with the National Arts Club, we are a 501c3 nonprofit based in New York City with a mission to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts. Annually, we host over 150 free programs to the public, including exhibitions, theatrical and musical performances, lectures, and readings. To find out more about the National Arts Club, you can visit us at nationalartsclub.org, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's conversation featuring the Executive Director of the National Arts Club, Ben Hartley. Ben will be in conversation with longtime NAC member and founder of the Shakespeare Guild, John Andrews. Following the conversation will be a very brief Q&A, so please feel free to use the Q&A function for any questions you might have. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ben and John. Please enjoy their conversation.
Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you, Nadine.
And Ben, you've been at the National Arts Club now for, about 3 years, 3.5 years, something of that sort. When you first arrived, we were doing all in-person programs. And one of the things that you had brought to the club were afternoon events. And I thought those were terrific. And I kept demanding that you subject yourself to an interrogation at one of those. It never happened, so this is your opportunity to tell us all about what it's been like to be at the club and how you're feeling about the progress you're making.
Thank you, John. Yes, and thank you for remembering. I tried to escape doing the interrogation, but here we are, and I'm happy to do it with you. The afternoon programs interestingly started at the club here, and we'll tell our viewers a little more about the club in a bit. But the afternoon program started out of a real need we were seeing. We do these great programs, 150 programs a year, all of them free. We do them mostly in the evening, 6 and 7 o'clock start times. And so we had many people coming to us who were saying, I love your programs, I love what you do, but in New York City in January, February, March, it's cold, it's icy on the streets, I feel somehow in danger. I can't come to your programs in the evening. Is there any way you could do them during the daytime? And so it was really a response to a population, largely a population who is self-employed or elderly, who want to do things during the day, who are concerned about going out at night. And so we started the afternoon programs, and as it was partly my idea, I felt like I had to sign up for at least one of the programs with you. So yes. Here we are, 2.5 years later.
And are they still going on now? Are you having a few now?
Yeah, we are. We actually, right now as we speak, there's a program downstairs with our Chef Lynn, who's doing a program about truffles and champagne. We've done them about creative sessions. We've done them with afternoon programs. And really, there's a population in New York City that is very underserved for daytime programming, and New York City has such great programs during the evenings and the weekends, of course, but during the daytime, less so. And so we see great audiences coming for these free programs, music, dance, theater, conversations like this, and so we'll keep doing them.
Could you say a little bit about the history of the club? I gather it's approaching its 125th anniversary. And I suspect there are even members of the club who don't know as much as they would like to know about how it all came about.
You know, maybe now I'll ask my colleague Nadine to share some slides and I'll talk you through it. It's a little bit of a history about the National Arts Club. So there we are, the National Arts Club. We're just going into the full mode. There we are, my office. You see the black and white logo there. I'm speaking to you directly from the office above that with the flagpole there. So it's a club that was founded in 1898 by Charles Decay. It was founded as a nonprofit. So we're a private club with a public mission, which means that you can come to the club and enjoy the club as a member. We have about 1,800 members, but you can also come to enjoy any one of our arts programs for free. And we have about 30 to 40,000 New Yorkers who come and enjoy the programs for free. So it was founded with the idea that Charles Decay and his co-founders, Lewis Comfort, Tiffany, and others, wanted to have a club that was about all of the art forms. Already existing was the Players Club, which you can actually see in the left-hand side of that image there. The Players Club was supporting the theatrical world. There was also the Salamagundi Club that was all about the visual arts world, but Charles Decay and his co-founders really felt there needed to be a club that was about all of the art forms. So he founds a club with 8 initial committees. We're now 16 committees, and he founds it up on 34th Street. He does something radical in the day. He has women as full and equal members. Most clubs in New York City did not have women as full and equal members until 1987, when it was federally mandated. So this is a National Arts Club, and we're a club where we host events, where we have writers, where we have musicians perform, and it's a lively, convening place of the arts. Nadine, next slide, please. There you go. We have founded on that mission to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts. It was good to keep in mind that the Metropolitan Museum was only founded 27 years before the National Arts Club, and we were a good 30 or 40 years before the Museum of Modern Art. It was a period when America was very much looking to Europe for its art influences, and the National Arts Club was really meant to bring about this idea of the American public being aware of American artists and the world of the arts. We did a strategic plan when I came here 3 years ago, and we had a vision to be inspirational, influential, and inclusive. That's really where we're aiming to be in all of our programs and operations. Next slide, please. So we've always been about artists. The one I love here is Nathaniel Mary Quinn. It's the fur jacket with the hat. That is an artist who is now represented by Gagosian Gallery, one of the top galleries in the world. Mary Quinn had his first show here, his first student show here about 25 years ago. And for now to have a student show and then come back to us a number of years ago and do a program here was wonderful. But we've also had many other artists coming and presenting here over the years and showing their works. And Faith Ringgold there, who's got a beautiful show right now at the New Museum in New York. Romeo Bearden, Chuck Close, and Dali, who was honored here as well. Next slide, please. And so the club has, as I mentioned, the private parlors, but it also has the public programs. And it's always about a multi-generational group of people coming together. We have wonderful members who are 21. We have wonderful members who are 91. And that range of ages and backgrounds and interests is so rich and wonderful. It really brings the life to the club. Next slide, please. One thing that I've really been focusing on over the last 3 years is building partnerships with other nonprofit organizations. So we just did something with the National Academy of Design. The National Academy of Design was founded in 1826. So they make us look sort of sprightly and young in comparison at 124 years of age. But they bring into their collection every year a new cohort of academicians. And so this year they got to display those works, including Rashid Johnson, the artist you're seeing right there, display those works at the club, in our parlors, and they actually use office space here. So we're always about trying to find long-term partnerships with other arts organizations. The Sphinx organization supports young Black and Latino musicians, and we've done a lot of online programming with them during the pandemic. And then on the right-hand side, you see Jazz on Our Stoop. That's our outside stoop. And that's a program that really started during the pandemic. The idea that we couldn't do programming inside, but we could do programming outside. And we did it with our partners, the National Jazz Museum in Harlem, who we continue to work with. Next slide, please. There you go. There is Alfonso Horn, who's a great musician out of New Orleans, performing on the streets. At a time where obviously we were all locked down. This was last summer, so we had a brief respite here in New York. And these concerts became incredibly popular. The National Arts Club, which has always been somewhat of an inward-looking organization, for the first time through programs like this, Jazz on the Stoop and online programming, became a much more outward-looking organization. Next slide, please. And then we also looked in how could we build partnerships with other organizations. So the Administration of Children's Services is a city agency that deals with the foster care population here in the city, young children who are taken away from their homes in usually tragic and difficult situations. So we provide art therapy to those children. We also worked with the Soho Renaissance Factory and Art to Heart. These are two of the organizations that just sprung up over the summer of 2020 in response to Black Lives Matter, in response to the pandemic. And they started decorating billboards and wooden placards that were put on the outside of the stores, particularly in Soho. And so this groundswell of artists came and started decorating and painting these as expressions of what was going on in the arts as a way to express their artistic freedom and ideas. And we worked with a number of these artist collectives to show these works at the National Arts Club, the first time these had been shown anywhere within an institution. And so we continue to work with various partners and working with people like the American Friends of the Louvre and other ideas, the idea of working with engaging cultural groups and looking to have long-term partners with them. So that's something we've really been focused on at the National Arts Club. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're able to do over the pandemic, you're seeing some very dark images there of what was a very dark space, our grand gallery. And one of the silver linings of the last couple of years is that we've been able to undertake a number of renovations. We have a courageous board that's making fiscally responsible decisions. And we're able to take what was our grand gallery space and turn it into, it was carpet, it had a gray carpet on there, sort of a light-sucking gray carpet, unfortunately. It was the historic ballroom of Governor Tilden, whose mansion this was before it became a club. And so we were able to convert it into a light-filled space, which you'll see in the next slide. Oh, there it is before. So it looks perfectly nice, but the gray carpet is less than uplifting. Let's go to the next slide. And here it is in two images. We were able to renovate it over the last summer and then open it up with an Andy Warhol exhibition that came from the Bank of America collection. And so you can see dramatically different. We worked with David Scott Parker, a wonderful architect. He's on the board of the National Trust, who sensitively upgraded this historic space. And this was something that was, a pivot for us during the pandemic. Next slide, please. Our lower galleries, these were the historic part of the clubhouse that Governor Tilden would have had his kitchen in, that then the club had the men's grill in these very dark, foreboding spaces that showed great exhibitions for many years, but then over the last 2 years, we're able to renovate those as well. And I'll show you in the next slide. And here they are, light-filled. On the top right, there you see one of the galleries. On the bottom right, it's a little hard to see, but there's a green plaster wall there. The fascinating part of that green plaster wall, and there's a cross-hatching that one can see if one zooms in very close, is that was the space that was the men's grill. And the cross-hatching is actually the shadowing of the cigar smoke and the fire smoke that was in that salon space. And so when we renovated that space, we pulled back the carpet and the wall that was there, and it revealed this beautiful sort of memory of a time gone by. And so our architect, David Scott Parker, decided to leave that in place and then have an artist on the right side, where you see the fireplace, recreate that look. So some of that is real, some of that is from 2022. So that's the National Arts Club. Do we have any more, Nadine, or is that it, I think? We're back to John. That is a quick run through some of the National
I'm eager
Club.
to see these. I haven't had a chance to be back at the club. So I'm forward to that, yes.
And what you don't see in those, of course, is the historic parlors that are unchanged and beautiful 1860s parlor spaces.
Is it true that the Manhattan was invented at the National Arts Club?
There are many good rumors, and we're going to say yes. We're going to say
all right.
I've read that was the case, and
yes.
Certainly our members honor that every evening by having a number of them. So
yes,
I'm going to say yes.
Yes. Well, I did hear that it was invented for Samuel Tilden in honor of him. And I presume that was after the run for the presidency. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure when exactly the drink was made, but Tilden did indeed live here, Governor Tilden, two-term governor. Tilden lived in a mansion. And then in 1876, he did run unsuccessfully. He won for the presidential post. He would have been in this very room where I'm speaking to you from.
Is that right?
November 1876. He would have been looking over the square where thousands of people like him thought that he was the new president of the United States. In fact.
Yes.
And something we thought would never be repeated again. He won the popular vote, did not win the electoral vote.
That would never happen again. Of course
never happening.
That's right.
So Tilden, yeah, it's poor Governor Tilden. He after he was a very public figure, so much so that one of the things he did was break up the Boss Tweed organized labor ring, sort of the precursor to the mafia. And as a result, he was terrified of, so the story goes, he was terrified of being assassinated. So if you visit the National Arts Club, you'll see 16 sets of double doors that were used as his security. And he would move into a space and the doors would be closed. So after 1876, when Tilden lost his presidential bid, he retreated into a very private and somewhat sad life with failing health, unfortunately.
And how did his house become the National Arts Club's home? Because I gather the club began on 34th Street. Am I correct about that?
It did, correct. Yeah, it began on 34th Street in 1898. And then in 1905, the club, by that stage, Tilden had died. He'd put it into trust, and there was quite a long, lengthy legal dispute about it, but the club bought it in 1905, and then 1906 moved in here and converted what was a private mansion into a clubhouse. So taking what was a basement with 4 floors, a grand ballroom, as you would have seen, a parlor area, and then also adding to the back of that building, it's about a 90,000 square foot property or campus, adding to the back a 14-story studio building where we currently have always had artist apartments and other apartments. And we have 27 apartments in there right now, and some of them absolutely gorgeous. August Bemelman, the author of Madeline, lived there.
Really?
He wrote many of his books there. And when he died, he left behind in life 2 beautiful murals, one at the Bemelman's Bar up in the Carlisle Hotel, and the other in apartment 12C at the National Arts Club, which depicts a beautiful little scene of the Eiffel Tower with a donkey and a gendarme's sword and cap. So it's quite a lovely scene and
I love that.
Beautiful little part of New York history.
Yes. And am I correct that the National Arts Club, was it the first club to admit women as well as men, or were there clubs prior to the NAC that did that?
You know, I don't have the exact answer, but we certainly believe it was the first in New York City to admit women. Yeah, I'm not sure about the whole of the United States, but certainly New York City, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And say a little bit about the collection of art from the early membership of the club.
So the club from its early days was very much about supporting American artists and encouraging American artists. And it started a program, the Artists for Life program, where it approached leading artists of the day and asked them to donate a work of art of more than $1,000 worth of value. Maybe that's around $75,000 now. So established artists.
Right.
And in exchange, they would get a membership to the club. So the club has an incredibly strong collection from the early 1900s up until around the 1930s, when the club management and governorship became a little more conservative and moved away from that program. And so now we've reinstituted it and very happily have artists joining us. And so, yeah, we have some wonderful works, over 600 or 700 works in the collection. That are on the parlor walls and shown in exhibitions and available online. You can go and visit them on Google's Art and Culture site. In fact, you can come to the National Arts Club website, and we have a virtual tour you can take of the club, which is wonderful.
Well, one of my favorite artists was Everett Raymond Kensler, who was a member of the club next door as well, and did a lot of work for the players. And did he not have a studio at the NAC?
He did. Everett Raymond Kinsler's wonderful man, recently deceased. He lived at the National Arts Club in the studio building for 70 years, 70, and he had 2 gorgeous apartments with north-facing light, one of which he would use as his studio, and then a doorway at some point was put between the 2 that allowed him to go back to his apartment. Yes. And he's painted presidents, college professors, corporate titans in that studio space there. And Ray has also done 4 presidential portraits. He's just was an incredibly talented artist and just a wonderfully generous man as well. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think it was shortly after my wife and I had moved from the Washington, D.C. area to Santa Fe. And I was coming into the club and Ray was leaving. And he said, well, how is 30 across? And I thought, 30 across. And it turned out that was the crossword hint for which the answer was Oliphant. Patrick Oliphant, the cartoonist, who's a good friend of ours here in Santa Fe. And they were very close friends. And
he had a great sense of humor, Ray. And one of the great things that he did for the club here, other than being an incredible member and also a member of many of the committees here, is we have a Medal of Honor ceremony. Our 16 arts committees, a number of them every year, honor someone special, a leader in their field. The most recent was Christian McBride, the jazz musician, and before that, Anna Sui, the fashion designer. And Ray had traditionally painted the portraits of these Medal of Honor winners, and they hang in our portrait gallery. And it's a lovely tradition, and it's one that his student, Michael Shane Neal, has now taken over from Ray. And lovingly does these gorgeous portraits that are shown in the portrait gallery, which is really a history of some of the great artists of the last 100 years. Yes. Here.
Now, is the portrait gallery, is that the gallery that as you come to the top of the steps, it's to the left and along the walls there? Yes.
It is. It's part of the public space of the National Arts Club. People are welcome to come in and see it any day of the week. And it just is a series of Placido Domingo, of Dave Brubeck, of all these greats of the arts that have come in here, had intimate black tie events and been awarded the Medal of Honor. So it's been a lovely history of the arts here in New York and America.
I'm sure that not everyone at the club knows about your past history. I know that you grew up in Australia, and tell us a little bit about how you paved your way to New York and some of the institutions that you worked with prior to the NAC.
All serendipity, John. I came to America. Throughout my life, I've always loved culture. Loved the curiosity of exploring culture, whether that's traveling the world or going to museums or listening to performances or going to plays. I came to New York, like many, as an immigrant. I came here to study, did a master's degree. And my first job was through a professor I had in my master's degree at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is an amazing organization. I thought I'd come to New York for 2 years and then I'd go back to bucolic Australia. Why would I leave Sydney? But I ended up here. And I got to witness Mark Morris Dance Company, Robert Wilson, Robert Lepage, all these great performers, directors, creators that gravitate to New York. And it was in my blood. I couldn't stop. That led me on to other jobs at, Museum of Arts and Design, at the Guggenheim Museum. I ran a media company. I did some online auction startup work, done some consulting, but it's always been around art, culture, ideas, business. That's been my passion and interest.
Do you have a favorite art form? Is there an art form in which you yourself contribute?
Oh, I learned very quickly that my talents were better behind the stage than on the stage. My talent is working with artists and getting them to do their best. Hopefully that's where I can add real value. I love jazz. I love music. I love, I love all the art forms. I love, walking through Union Square every morning and seeing a number of months ago, someone just with headphones on dancing by themselves in the middle of Union Square. I love listening to the subway. There's a certain 2 or 3 notes that when the subway pulls into the station or leaves, that are the first 3 notes of the West Side Story. There's a place for us. Really? and I hear it everywhere, and I'm not a big Broadway fan, but there is something in the streets of New York and the culture of New York, and so culture has always been what's driven me. I love jazz. I've always loved jazz as well. And, I'm open to it all.
Yes. Now, I think I'm correct that a few years ago you described the NAC as a 122-year-old startup. What did you mean by that?
I was being a bit cheeky there, I guess. So it's the idea. The National Arts Club is this incredible organization that's been around for 124 years now. And for many of those years, it's been very happily sitting in the shadows of leafy Gramercy Park. And it has really been about the membership, and it hasn't been about necessarily looking out beyond Gramercy Park to a broader community. And so I think there's incredible talent with our members, with our performers that are here, that are our presenters, with our exhibitions. And I just felt like there's all this essence of greatness. And yet, the one question I would ask any arts organization when I go work with them, or a corporation or an organization, is if you closed your doors tomorrow, who would care? And if no one cares, then maybe you should close your doors. Yes. And so for some time, I think the who cares part of the equation at the National Arts Club had gone away.
Interesting.
There was a passionate membership, so it was great as a place to come and see friends and have a community. But the who cares part for the arts was less evident, and the engagement with the arts. And that's really where I wanted to take it with, and very, very good board of governors who are very interested in that broader expression of what the National Arts Club could be. So.
And what are the steps you have taken to make sure that there are those who will care?
Really about engagement with the outside community. And, everyone talks about the pandemic brought about great hardship, which it truly did. But for us, the silver lining in that very, very dark cloud was the opportunity to bring our programs online, like the one we're doing just now. It's very gratifying to know that our programs are reaching around the world. We have our programs running on the YouTube channel. They're seen by, a couple of 100,000 people saw our programs last year.
Yes.
I just received a very nice small donation from someone who lives in Austin, Texas today.
Is that right?
They've never been to the National Arts Club, but they love the programming we're doing. And so we've been able to, it's interesting. I've always worked in the world of culture where you have a curator or an artistic director, someone with training doing the programming. Whereas the National Arts Club, it's always been about the membership. We have 16 membership committees, the arts committees that do the programming. And to be honest, when I first got here, I thought, oh my goodness, that's going to be a lot of work. But the reality is we're meeting people at their point of passion, at their point of absolute care. And these are the people you want. So in the pandemic, what you want is when you're trying to do online programming, which every cultural institution in the world was trying to do, we were trying to be relevant to our audiences. We had 16 arts committees throwing out ideas. You did an incredible program with Dame Judi Dench, amongst others, Serene McCallum. We never would have got them otherwise, but because we had people like you who had such deep connections around the world, it gave us something that had never been there before. And so for us, that's one of the things. We've reached out to a broader community.
Yes.
We've done these programs on the stoop, these jazz programs on the stoop. We've done the renovations. And it's really interesting. Last September onwards, when the club reopened, we closed July and August. When we reopened, we saw more new members than ever before coming to the club, applying to be members, coming to our programs.
Yes.
They were younger, They were more diverse. And that is a great endorsement of us getting out to a broader world and a broader community. And that's very satisfying for everyone at the club.
And you've also developed relationships with other organizations, have you not?
Yeah, so the relationship we had with the National Jazz Museum, for example, is a wonderful organization. It's a Smithsonian museum based in Harlem, focusing on the history of jazz. And through one of our very kind donors and members, Arthur Barnes, we were able to build a program of presenting major jazz musicians here at the club before the pandemic, but also during the pandemic as we were programming on the Stoop. And that type of partnership, New York has such great, and America and the world has incredibly rich cultural organizations, and yet the one thing we don't sometimes do is we don't share our resources, we don't collaborate, we don't cooperate. And so the National Jazz Museum is, for us, a perfect model of working with an arts organization that has an expertise that can bring things to us that we don't have, and vice versa. And really, that was one of the founding ideas of Charles Decay and the other founders, of bringing all of the art forms, of the National Arts Club being a place to converge. And so we've brought that idea forward over the last 3 years, where in New York City, if you work in the dance world, you don't necessarily know the people in the poetry world or the theater world or the museum world. And so now, pre-pandemic and starting again now, we bring together every 2 months a cohort of executive directors of small to mid-size arts organizations from the Bronx, from Newark, from the Queens, from our tri-state area, who've never been together before, never met each other. And we start with a little speech. We say, in the arts, we have a deficit of assets. We don't have enough money. We don't have space. We don't have enough board members. And yet we all have one thing in abundance that we can share with everyone else. And so then I encourage them to become an artist fellow or a member fellow so that they can utilize our space for a certain amount of time. And I ask them in exchange to tell everyone else at the table what they can share. Wonderful. And so by that, we can start. Now, the Poetry Society of America has a partnership with Snug Harbor in Staten Island. Because they've met there, that convergence of arts organizations. We do this every 2 months. Yes. And then we bring them all together for this sort of big speed dating where everyone comes into the room together. Right. And then we also found there was another group that never gets together in New York City, and that's the cultural attachés. So if you're from Taiwan or Brazil or Singapore, you typically have someone in the city here representing your culture and hopefully representing that the American culture back to the place of origin. Those people never know each other. The Brazilians never know the Australians, never know the Taiwanese. So we brought them together again every 2 months. So that's, I think, a role that the National Arts Club can play, to be this convener of organizations, convener of ideas, convener of peoples. And now we bring the cultural attachés together with the arts organizations twice a year, and we share all the contact information with everybody. So that's why we have our doors open now. Yes, that's our.
Are you also developing new connections to the corporate community? Is that
we're a non-profit, we're a 501c3. That's an important part of the equation of any non-profit in America and elsewhere. As you, I'm sure, know, there are 4 main funding sources: individuals, governments, foundations, and corporations. And we've been very fortunate. Amazon has supported our programs last year. Bank of America has come in and supported our programs. We even had Timo Wieland, who's a downtown fashion designer, help donate and design jackets. You're required to wear a jacket if you're a member after 5 p.m. or a member guest. So he's donated these very stylish jackets, John. We'll have to get you into one next time you're here.
I like that. And how about schools and universities and so forth? What are your...
Yeah, we have a number of engagements. So the Administration for Children's Services, which tend to be younger children in foster care between the ages of about 7 and 14. We also work with Gramercy Arts High School, which is just around the corner from us. We also we have the Will Barnett Student Show, which has been going on for 20 years now. It's a wonderful show where we invite undergraduate students from some of the leading art schools in New York. It just opened last week.
Yes.
Some of the most fresh and original and brilliant artworks on display. And for many of these artists, this is their first show. And so it's a great opportunity to engage with the artists of tomorrow.
Yes. Is there anything you haven't done yet that is on your wish list?
It's not that glamorous, but I really want to renovate our bathrooms.
Yes.
We have these very historic.
Well, I know the ones on the fourth floor could use a little work.
They all could use a little work, to be honest.
Right.
In a 160-year-old building, it's
Yes.
a constant work. Yeah, I mean, we need. We're in a very old building, so there are always pieces
Right.
falling off it, and so. Part of the preservation of a historic building like this, it's important that building is kept in good shape, that it
Right.
can answer the needs of modern audiences. I think for the National Arts Club, we want to continue to partner with arts organizations around the world. We just did this amazing partnership with the American Friends of the Louvre. The Louvre, an incredible museum, leading museum
Yes.
of the world. What they didn't have, though, was a platform in America, a chance to talk to a broader audience in America.
Right.
So we were able to do a long-term programming with them. So those are the types of things that excite me. How can we work with arts organizations? How can we add value? How can we be essential to the arts?
I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think, how about the neighborhood? Do you do anything in collaboration with the club next door, the Players? And
Players is a lovely old historic club, and we have a friendship with them. We do a lot of programs with them.
Right.
But, the community, this is what we also discovered during the pandemic, that reaching out to community was incredibly important. As I mentioned, we have about 1,800 members, and understanding what that community needs is also important. So early pandemic, we're all jumping online. We're doing online arts programming. Very exciting. That's happening around the world. What is less obvious to us, and becomes obvious, is that many of the people who are watching our programs, they don't know how to get on Zoom. It's not obvious to them how to do online programming.
Right.
And that's where we started adding value. So we started sending out newsletters telling people, if you need help getting on Zoom, we can help you. And we were doing that. Now, we were doing that in print. Our staff called every single one of our members, a good number of whom are elderly, who are alone. And so we learned that our community was broader, and we also learned new ways to communicate with them. I started a Monday newsletter that was part gossip, part historical, part arts news. And we thought, let's just start it at the beginning of the pandemic. Well, it turns out people love it. And so an open rate of like 70%. So people are constantly reading and want to learn more. And it's a great way for us to communicate to members and to the broader public about what's going on in the arts and in New York.
Yes.
As well.
And I gather that a lot of the online programs are drawing global audiences. And I'm wondering, are people who are hundreds of miles from New York, do they feel an affiliation with the club? I guess you mentioned that actually, didn't you? That some are joining the club, and
it's been wonderful.
How does that work for them?
We've had people all over the world joining us, which is great because you can watch the programs live, of course, or you can watch them on our YouTube channel.
Right.
And they reside there forever. And it's been, for us, it's been this great opportunity to speak to a broader global audience. And we've become a trusted part of some people's houses, thanks to people like yourself, John. And other arts committees have done an incredible job. So, the online audience is seen in over 70 countries around the world, hundreds of thousands of people. And I think for many arts organizations, this has been a huge realization. That they have a broader audience, that it is part of their responsibility also to give greater access. Certainly in the world we live in, and the responsibilities of arts organizations. So, there's great things that can be done for this with our communities.
I know a lot of people are not aware of some of the programs you do to recognize new talent and cultivate it. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about, for example, the Medal of Honor that you give, and isn't there an award for young actors as well?
Well, we certainly have the Kesselring Prize, which is for new playwrights, well-recognized playwrights, which is the prize is a $25,000 prize for playwrights, and we ask for theaters around America to make submissions with new works of art, which is incredible. Mona Mansour and Matthew Freeman are recent recipients of the Kesselring Prize. The Medal of Honors recognize leaders in their field. As I mentioned, Christian McBride, the musician, a jazz-based musician, an incredible entrepreneur, has just recently received an award here at the club, as has Anna Sui, the fashion designer. And then we also have the Artist Fellows program. The Artist Fellows program is where we invite artists of various art forms, of all art forms, to put in a submission to become part of the National Arts Club. They get an 18-month membership. They can have exhibitions here. They can do presentations here. They can engage with membership. They can engage with the public. So for us, it's an opportunity to support artists and give them an opportunity to get to a broader audience. So that hopefully helps the next generation of artists have an opportunity to shine and build support.
Sounds wonderful to me. Well, I gather that there might be a question or two from viewers, and I wonder if Nadine could convey those questions to us. Nadine?
I would love to.
All
There is one question. The Judi Dench program was the first NAC event I virtually attended, says this person, a viewer. She was lovely. And maybe, this is maybe for both of you. They want to know, what was your favorite program during the pandemic? I'm assuming that's National Arts Club.
That's a good question. John, you answer first.
Well, I must say I had so much fun conversing with, the idea that we could actually be talking with someone thousands of miles away, that hadn't occurred to me before the pandemic came along and before Zoom became possible. So we began with conversations with scholars, for example, James Shapiro of Columbia and Stephen Greenblatt of Harvard. And then we began branching out to actors in the New York area, John Douglas Thompson, who is now starring as Shylock in a new production of The Merchant of Venice at Theater for New Audience. And before long, we found ourselves talking, as you mentioned, with Dame Judi Dench and Sir Ian McKellen and Sir Richard Eyre, the former director of the National Theatre in London, filmmaker as well. And all of that has been, for me, just very, very satisfying. I'm delighted. And one consequence of that actually is that in April, we're going to be doing a program in London at Westminster Abbey. I don't know whether it will be something that we can share with the world, but I would really love to be able to do so. And it will be the installation of a new floor plaque at the foot of the Shakespeare Memorial in Poets' Corner. And Sir John's plaque will be the third in a sequence that begins with Henry Irving, the first actor to be knighted, and Laurence Olivier. So those three will be converging in effect with the Shakespeare Memorial, which goes back to shortly after the playwright died. So that's very exciting. And so, yes, I think the fact that we've been able to do these kinds of global outreach has been something that I would never have expected. Sweet are the uses of adversity.
That's a good answer.
Nadine?
John, I'm gonna pass on that one because it's like choosing favorite children, even though I've only got two. I did love that James Shapiro program that you did with Shakespeare in America because I just read the book. And it's such a brilliant book. And to hear James speaking was wonderful. But I do see a question from Lola, who is actually one of our artist fellows, our new artist fellows. She says, is there anything Ben wants to see more of when it comes to programming? Is there anything he feels is missing? Yes, Lola, I feel you're missing. I'm so glad you're going to be part of the Artist Fellows program. Lola is an amazing English journalist, musician, creative, and what I really want to have more of. Our fall programming theme is Think Global, new visions, new ideas, and we're looking to engage with the world. So I want partnerships with global arts institutions. That's what I want to see more of, the voices that we don't hear from or hear about in the United States. There are so many great creators that I'd love to hear more. So Lola, I'm looking at you and others to come back with ideas. Thank you. I'm gonna, Nadine, maybe you want to choose one or two of those. I see one or two others coming through.
Absolutely. Let's see. This is from Patricia. I think this is more for John again. John, I love all your programs. He always brings out the best in everyone. I know John will be in London at Poets Corner in Westminster Abbey in April. What programs after that have you coming up for us?
Gee, I haven't thought that far ahead, Patricia, but I'm glad that somebody is forcing me to do so.
We are too. One final question or comment from Patty. If one is inclined towards recognizing silver linings, the number of connections formed and nurtured over the past 2 years between cultural organizations such as yours and us, many not in easy proximity, has been, I think, a tremendous mutual benefit. And I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Patty.
Absolutely, Patty. You're right. I think that cultural organizations are best when they're working collaboratively, not in silos. And so this has forced us to think differently, and that's good. That's good. We want to think differently. That's the pivot that hopefully will be for more open arts, for more collaborative, and reach broader audiences and greater participation. So I could not agree more with you.
And Ben, speaking on behalf of everyone who loves the club, we are so grateful to have you, and the combination of qualities that you have brought to the club. It's really been invigorating.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. You know, I do not work alone. I work with an incredible board of governors. I work with great arts committee chairs and programmers. It's a rich community, and I am just lucky to be part of it. And it's exciting. Every day I come in here and I'm faced with something I've never seen before. And I love that. So you can't ask for anything more.
Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, John. Thank you, everyone.